Welcome to the April 23rd school committee meeting being broadcast remotely via Teams and on RCTV. Tonight we'll start with public comment, and then we'll open a public hearing on school choice, followed by consent agenda, reports, and then new business. We'll also have the presentation on the Student Opportunity Act and the a review of the superintendent's evaluation process. So having said that, I'm going to do a roll call. Sean Brandt.
Here.
Tom Wise.
Here.
John Parks.
Here.
Aaron Gaffin.
Here.
Carla Nazaro.
Here.
Jennifer Stiles.
Here.
Gail Dowd.
Here.
Chris Kelly.
Here.
And John Dougherty.
Here. Jen Allen.
And and Mara Drummy.
Here.
Great. Okay. Is there any, if anyone has any public comment, they can, not regarding items on the agenda, they can send the email to dgschoolcommittee@reading.k12.ma.us. That's dgschoolcommittee@reading.k12.ma.us. I'd now like to open the public hearing on school choice. We will accept public comment on this right away. So if you have something on that while we keep it open, please send to that email address. Other public comment we'll address at the end of the meeting. So does the committee have any questions or comments? Or Dr. Dougherty, actually, did you want to just make a few comments on school choice?
Sure, thank you. Under Massachusetts general law, we are required each year to have the school committee take a vote on whether or not they want to enter the school choice process by June 1st. We felt that this would be a good time to do it, considering there's a lot going on, and we want to make sure that the school committee takes this vote in a timely manner. So essentially, what the school committee could do if they wanted to have school choice is it could be specific to a level or a grade. We would then come up with a process in order to make that happen if we were going to move forward on that. It does open up the opportunity as well for, not that this can happen anyway, but students can also leave Reading at the same time and go to other districts through the school choice process. I have included in the packet the projected enrollment right now for the 2020-2021 school year. We are obviously still going through enrollment of students. Our kindergarten numbers will be the ones that will probably change the most, although we always do get a number of students from this point forward throughout the summer and then into the beginning of the school year. Obviously, we have no idea how the current health crisis is going to impact enrollment in terms of families moving in. So that's something we certainly will keep an eye on. We are also in the process right now of accepting our METCO students as well. Usually the students that are graduating, we replace that number in the primary grades. So we're going through the process right now of that. And those students are not included in these numbers. Based on our space constraints that we are all well aware of, I would recommend at this point that we do not move forward with school choice for the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you. Does anybody, we're using the chat feature. If you have a question, you can post it now if you have a question for Dr. Dougherty. For the committee, Sean Brandt.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. John, just in the interest of making sure our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, is the notice of the hearing actually in the packet? Because it's referenced in the memo. I just want to make sure that not having the notice of the hearing, it doesn't look to me like it's in the packet. And I want to make sure our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed since it is a public hearing.
We are not required for school choice to do the 15-day public hearing that we do for the budget process.
Okay, so no concern there.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Tom Wise.
Thank you, Chuck. Dr. Dougherty, would you mind explaining what the slashes are for the middle school numbers? We see Coolidge, for example, 154 slash 26. What's
That's
that?
the class size.
Okay. And do you recall off the top of your head, apologies if I ask a second question, what the capacity numbers were? I remember seeing it when we were doing the study stuff back in October, November timeframe, but I don't have it immediately available.
For the middle schools?
Middle schools or elementary schools? Elementary, I think we're pretty clear with capacity, except maybe Woodend.
Right. So
But-
middle schools, right now we are lower. I mean, we could probably go up to 1,000, 1,100 if we needed to at the middle schools. We do have 8 teams at Parker, 6 teams at Coolidge. We would not be able to go any higher with the number of teams because of the classrooms. So what you would see are class sizes going up. You wouldn't be able to add classes.
Okay. I haven't seen any public comment at this point. Gonna close the public hearing. Or Tom, did you have another question?
Just one more question. I'm looking at this and I was forgetting, if we did accept a student coming in from out of district, would we receive that district's per child expenditure, or would we receive our district's per child expenditure as part of that?
We would receive $5,000.
Just 5,000. So it wouldn't
Correct.
even cover either one of those numbers theoretically.
No.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing and would like a motion.
Sure. The motion is we move pursuant to provisions of MGL Chapter 76, Section 12B, that the School Committee of Reading, following a public hearing, hereby withdraws from its obligation to enroll non-resident students in Reading Public Schools during the 2020-2021 school year for the following reason: general district enrollment.
Is there a second?
Second, Sean.
Second by Sean. Is there any other discussion? This is a roll call vote. Mr. Wise?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
John Parks?
Aye.
Carla Nazaro?
Aye.
Chuck Robinson, aye. Okay, thank you. We don't have any items for the consent agenda. So we won't do that. Now we'll do reports. Maura, did you have anything?
I do.
I know. Great. Go ahead.
All right. There you go. Can you see me? Oh, perfect. Okay. So, hi everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I have some updates regarding the remote learning along with student activity during this time. So in terms of the remote learning, as you all know, this was meant to be April vacation this week. So we had assignments on Tuesday and Wednesday and the rest of the week off. Because we only had 2 days and it wasn't the normal 5-day school week, the work this week was a lot more manageable and it was reasonable. So that was awesome. And now in terms of student activities, for the seniors, typically we give out senior shirts at the all-night party, but obviously since that's not happening, we are still going to give the seniors their shirts for free. So what we did is we worked remotely as class office to get all the sizes of the students in their elementary school, since all the shirts have different designs based on the school you went. And we are planning to distribute those to seniors in a safe way soon, along with senior lawn signs. Additionally, the RMHS Drama Club recently had an event called Beantown to Broadway. On their Instagram, they had a live stream with 2 Broadway actors, and members of the drama club could submit questions to the actors and they would answer them on the live stream. So that was a great way to get engagement during this time as well. And then lastly, the chorus department. Typically at their spring concert, they sing the song Let the River Run. This is an annual tradition where they have alumni come to the stage and sing with them. And since the concert isn't happening, what they did is remotely, all the different voice parts recorded themselves singing at their houses their part, and then someone compiled them into one video, and you can check it out on their Instagram. It's RMHS_choirs, and it's really beautiful to watch, and you can't even tell, the way it sounds, you can't even tell that they all recorded it by themselves at home. So those are some ways students have been involved recently and trying to keep up student cheer during this time.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Stiles, I think you had a report.
Yes, I just had a quick update. Good evening, everybody. And it seems every week I get to go after Maura, who does such a good job talking about the students and what is going on to continue to build that connection and connectivity through all of the staff. And I just want to thank her so much and all of the students. And I must say, I find that that's exactly what's happening across Reading. All of the departments and buildings are all working together, and it's just an amazing partnership to see how we can support each other and help students learn. So in special education, we are continuing to get out our continuation of learning plans, and they're really going to continue to focus on those 3 tiers, the connection and connectivity, which Maura mentioned, supports and resources that families can access, and then also the instruction. So it's not going to look like a typical school day would, but for example, all of the related service providers are sending supports and resources. Lots of them are sending videos and or doing check-ins with the students and families. So they see a variety of the students in a variety of different ways in order to offer support that matches the needs of the student and the family. And one of the things we just wanted to clarify, the state had advised us to use what they termed office hours. And we know that that's been a bit confusing to people because it's not traditional office hours like you would think of from a college professor. It really is much more of an instructional support time. So during those office hours, families are able to meet with the teacher, or the student and teacher are able to meet together, or related service provider, to do some direct instructional time and to do some pre-teaching and reteaching. So that's an important clarification. We just wanted everyone to know we did mirror the language of the state. but it's really applied very differently than traditional office hours. The other thing that we're doing is a lot of training and working very closely with technology and curriculum to make sure we're providing training for our staff, but we are also providing some upcoming trainings for parents. And so for any parents that are going to be participating in remote 504 or IEP meetings, we're going to be offering a training in the beginning of May so that they could just become familiar with what that format is and if they have any questions and how to use Teams. And that will be coming out over the next week or two in the newsletter, so people should look for that. The other thing that we've been working on as a district and very closely with Jen Allard, Lauren Sabella, Mary, and some of the high school staff is building the mental health supports and resources and creating crisis plans. And so those will be additional things that are going to be coming out for families in terms of support that we can offer for them. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Gail, did you have a report?
I do not. I'm going to wait until next week to give an update on transportation.
Thank you. Chris?
I don't have a long report. I just wanted to echo Jen's comments about, especially about the training piece. We've been busy putting together a professional development website for our staff to access, where we've been putting links for all the recorded PD, the webinars, about remote learning, about additional trainings both locally and even internationally at times. So the learning and teaching team worked on that website in the last week or two, and that is up so that all staff is accessing that. So as we built the new infrastructure for remote learning and continue on what we're already doing, we have resources all in one place. So that's very exciting, and I know we worked really closely with the special ed team and the integration technology as well as the tech folks. So a huge shout out to them. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. John Dougherty?
Yes, thank you.
Hold up a second, I'm sorry. John Parks had a question?
Hey, Chris, just a quick question. I know we're using Google Classroom and Teams. Are we not looking at other solutions for live classrooms? Because using Teams here, it's not ideal. It doesn't tie to the Google Classroom the way it should.
That's a question that I think we're still working on internally, John. As we move into additional synchronous learning, which is live teaching and learning. Oh, sorry, my camera wasn't on. I think that we're going to be looking at lots of tools that really help support us in our work.
Thank you. Okay, John Dougherty.
Thank you. So as all of you know, and we heard on Tuesday, the governor has closed schools and both public, private, and daycare until June 29th. So obviously for the Reading Public Schools, we will not be in session for the remainder of the school year. And as I sent something out to the community on Tuesday, obviously, there's a lot of sadness. Although we kind of anticipated that this announcement was going to happen, there is a lot of sadness about this. And my heart, and I know the hearts of others, go out to our seniors, the class of 2020. And we obviously are going to do everything we can to figure out an appropriate way to have in a graduation ceremony that you will remember. So, but we do, we do feel that that this is difficult for our teachers, our parents, our staff, our students, that they're not going to be able to make those final connections at the end of the school year with their teachers. So what that means now is we know that we have 8 more weeks of school. And we are awaiting some additional guidance from the department, which we are hoping to receive tomorrow, as to the next phase of remote learning and what that will look like. We know that there will be an identification of certain standards, which are the state calls power standards, that we will be shifting our focus to prepare our students for when they return in the fall. So we will be putting out a new remote learning plan. We are working, or will be working in the near future, with the Reading Teachers Association to come up with a new memorandum of agreement. We are also in the process of developing memorandums of agreements with all of our collective bargaining units, now that we know that we are going to be out for the rest of the year. We did complete one with the paraeducators the other day, and we are working on food service, custodians, and secretaries as well. We also are going to continue the continuity of operations model that I communicated to you and our central office team communicated to you a few weeks ago. So we will be giving regular updates at these meetings as to the different areas and what's going to be our updates and what's going to be going on in those areas. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. Even though our physical buildings are down, closed down for the year, there is a lot still going on with the Reading Public Schools, and we obviously are going to be sharing that with you over the next several weeks. We are also continuing our operations with the town, the incident command structure, the operations and planning teams, and again, what seemed like so simple a few weeks ago, actually many weeks ago, is now turned into a very, very complex situation and operations that is requiring a lot of daily communication with town and school officials. So we're continuing to stay on top of that. And then finally, I just wanted to give a shout out. We sent out something today honoring our unsung heroes. Sent out a blog post, and it's really about those staff that have been continuing to come physically to work each day, or have a different role right now, an expanded role. So those include our custodians, our facilities department, our technicians, food service, and our nurses. And so we have all kinds of different pictures and stories on the blog post about the great work that they are doing. So I wanted to say thank you to them for really keeping the school district moving, even when the buildings are closed. So that's my report for this evening.
Thank you. Now, any committee reports? Mr. Carla Nazaro actually has a question.
Sorry, thank you. John, just a couple of comments maybe, or questions, comments. One is for the seniors. I would like us to try to keep on the table, if at all possible, to do something in terms of graduation or something for the seniors if they can be physically together in a social distancing type of situation. I want us to at least be focused on trying to achieve that if we can, as like a gold standard, knowing that if that doesn't work, that something virtual will take place. That's one piece of it. The second piece of it is in negotiating the MOA with the Teachers Association. I'm wondering if we can somehow incorporate some type of requirement, especially in the elementary level, of some kind of either video presence or a synchronous presence
having the opportunity for students to be able to see their teachers online, or whether they can click on a link and see a teacher read a book to them. If we can require that possibly for every grade level. I know teams are working at each grade level as a team. So just wondering, I think it's really beneficial for students to be able to see their teachers, especially at those lower levels. So thank you.
We can certainly explore both of those.
Great. Thank you.
John, I had a question. Someone, maybe Tom, had asked me, do you, or what's the plan to allow at some point students to get, and teachers to get into the building to get their whatever they left behind in their lockers or classrooms? Or is there a time when, is that after June 29th?
That's a question we really can't answer right now because we need to get more guidance from the governor. Right now, technically, everything is still closed until May 4th in terms of businesses, things like that. So once we hear more guidance from the governor, we can certainly take a look at, is there a way that we can do that safely for people.
Thank you. Okay, John Parks had a question.
Sorry. I just wanted to feed off the Carla's points. Yes, I would love not only to see some type of graduation ceremony, I'd like to see us, if it comes to it, figure out some way for these seniors to get a prom as well. Whether it's tents on the football field, catered, something like that. We need to recognize that these kids are missing a good 2 months of school. As far as the MOA, who is on the team for the district?
I'm not sure I follow you.
For when you go in to meet with the district, the union leadership, who is on the team for the district?
So it's actually pretty collaborative process. We take a look at the MOA together. When I mean we, it's central office team and the district leadership team. That's how the last MOA was put together. We took a look at the entire MOA. We edited it, redlined it, had a discussion about it, and then presented it to the RTA.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we'll have committee reports. Tom, did you have anything?
No, sir, I don't have anything to report this time.
John, did you?
No, sir.
Carla? No.
No, sir.
Aaron?
Yes. I participated in the weekly phone call last week with 2 members of the CPAC board and central office team, including Allison Wright as well. The CPAC board members were able to deliver some feedback that they had been hearing from parents. Most of it was positive. They did hear some concerns about how services would be provided, but for the most part, they got positive feedback, and they felt like they could answer the questions. They really want to convey to parents that if parents have questions about their child's continuous learning plan, that they should reach out to their teen chair and they should take advantage of the office hours. But also the CPAC board would really like to continue to hear from parents, whether it's joys or concerns, and then they can help relate that information to district leadership.
Great, thank you. Sean, did you have a report?
Yeah, just very quickly. 2 weeks ago, John Parks and I were appointed as liaisons to the Human Rights Ad Hoc Committee. I don't know if folks know, but that was actually slated to sunset in June. And just wanted to give a quick update that the select board did vote last night to extend that committee through December of this year. So once those meetings are back on the calendar, John and I may have more to report there.
Great, thank you. Okay, Dr. Dougherty, I think we're ready for the Student Opportunity Act presentation.
Sure, I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully this will work. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Super. So to give you a little bit of a context here, this plan is part of the additional Chapter 70 funding that was approved by the legislature a few months ago. Obviously, a lot has changed in our world in the last couple of months, and we do not know if the original funding is going to be allocated because it is subject to appropriation by the legislature. Reading was not slated to receive a large amount. In fact, we would receive the same increase that we normally would receive with Chapter 70 funding. However, we would have been required either way to submit a student opportunity plan, which was supposed to be due April 1st. Because of school closures related to the pandemic, that date has been pushed to at least May 15th. The commissioner has not given us any further guidance other than right now it's May 15th. However, he did say the other day that it is on the back burner. But we felt that this was a good opportunity to do this presentation now. And we have already shared this prior to the pandemic. We did share this with the CPAC at a board meeting. Did get some feedback from them. And so this is the first opportunity for the community as a whole to see this. And then we will get hopefully additional feedback about this plan. You'll see that the plan is set up into two parts. The first part is the part that is more current, looking forward to the next year. And then the second part, which is not required, but I felt was important to include, and again, everything that I'm showing you is pre-pandemic, pre-March 13th. The second part is what are some things that would help us moving forward in the next couple of years, because this is supposed to be a 3-year plan. So, having given that context, I want to go over the different parts of this plan. So, the law itself, Chapter 132 of the Act of 2019. Our goal is to submit a 3-year evidence-based plan to the department. This date has now been changed. And in the plan, we are identifying specific evidence-based programs, outline how the Chapter 70 funds or other funds will be used, establish targets and outcome measures, and specify ongoing plans to engage families. Those are the 4 components. Because we were receiving less than 1.5 million, and actually we're receiving approximately our normal increase, which is about $100,000, we qualified to use the short form. So this is a template that's already been set up. So what you're seeing tonight is the actual components of the template that are going to, at some point, will be submitted. So the commitments of the Student Opportunity Act is to intentionally focus on student subgroups that are not achieving at the same high level as their peers, to deepen or continue specific evidence-based programs, to close those opportunity and achievement gaps, to monitor the success through data collection among those student subgroups, and then engaging families. So there are a few commitments. The first commitment, and I'm going to go into this in more detail, is to focus on the student subgroups for your community that we should be focusing on based on the data. Then the second commitment is using the resources and evidence-based programs to close those gaps. The third commitment is how are you going to measure the success and monitor that success. And then the fourth commitment is how are you going to engage families, particularly the families of those subgroups. And then the last piece of the template is to get a vote by the school committee to approve the plan. So what we're looking at, and DESE gives us a menu of specific evidence-based programs or areas, and then from that you come up with a plan where you know your year one, and then you'll build on for years 2 and 3, and that will happen later on in the fall for year 2, and then the following fall for year 3. They also suggest that you do a few things well and not try to stretch yourself too thin. You also want to focus on the actual implementation piece. Once you focus on the few areas that you want to do well, and then moving forward, you develop the plan. So, Mr. Robinson, rather than take questions at this point, I'm just going to go into the specifics of our plan so that everyone can see, if that's okay.
Yes.
Great. So, DESE identifies 17 examples of high quality programs under the categories of enhanced core instruction, targeted student supports, talent development, and conditions for student success. What we identified through our process are the ones in boldface. So under enhanced core instruction, expanding access to full day, high quality pre-kindergarten for 4-year-olds, including potential collaboration. This also could include kindergarten, not necessarily just preschool. The second one, research-based early literacy programs. The next one, supporting educators to implement high quality aligned curriculum. Under targeted student supports, increased personnel and services to support holistic student needs. And you'll see how this all plays out in the actual plan. Under talent development, diversifying the educator administrator workforce through recruitment and retention. Increased staffing to expand student access to arts, athletics, and enrichment, and strategic scheduling to enable common planning time for teachers. And then the last one, under conditions for student success, facilities improvement to create healthy and safe school environments. Now, out of the ones that we have identified, the boldface ones, there are then program categories, and there are 9 evidence-based program categories, which you can see there, A through J. And that ranging from expanded learning time all the way to developing additional pathways to strengthen college and career readiness. So once you identify in the previous one all of your bold-faced areas, your examples, then you link the evidence-based program categories to those areas. So you'll see how that plays out. So now that I've given you the background of what DESE requires, I'm going to move into what Reading's proposed plan is going to look like. So the first piece is the commitment, the focusing on the student subgroups. So first is identifying what subgroups based on the data we want to focus on. So as you can see here in our analysis of our district data, our students with disabilities, high needs, English language learner, African American, and Hispanic students are not as successful on the MCAS outcomes as their peers. Our analysis shows that if a student is in more than one of these subgroups, the increased likelihood that they are not as, there is an increased likelihood that they are not as successful as their peers. So once you've identified those student subgroups, we then say, okay, so what evidence-based programs are we going to use to close those gaps? And these are the bold-faced areas that I referenced to earlier. So the first one I want to highlight is supporting educators to implement high-quality aligned curriculum. You will notice that the bulleted pieces here align with our current district improvement plan. That wasn't done by accident. That was done purposefully and strategically as we move forward. So you could see here that these are the different steps in the areas over the next 3 years. So first, obviously, we want to have a 5-year curriculum renewal cycle, which we have been working on, developing and begin implementation of a 5-year special education program review cycle, continue completion of curriculum guides pre-K to 12, develop and implement standards aligned curriculum in K to 12 social studies. We're reviewing and piloting K to 12 math, beginning with grades 7 and 8, and then continuing to commit resources to enhance the workshop model for writing, reading, and mathematics. We're also focusing on professional development for the needs of diverse learners. We're aligning our teacher induction and mentoring program. We're going to be working with the Teacher Assessment Process Committee to review the new teacher evaluation rubrics. Just to jump ahead for a second, the rubric that you're seeing tonight for the superintendent's evaluation is new. There is a parallel rubric that's new for teachers. Revising the elementary standards-based report card and conferencing, implementing a continuous student support cycle where you identify the students at risk and then select the interventions, you enact the interventions, and then you monitor student progress and growth, and then identify appropriate assessments to identify students with disabilities. Now, obviously, this was again pre-March 13th, and things now have been slowed down a little bit, but these are still real areas that we want to focus on as we continue with teaching and learning. The second evidence-based program that we want to take a look at is early literacy for pre-kindergarten and early elementary grades. And you can see all the different bulleted steps to do that. Starts by looking at high-quality instructional materials, reviewing and identifying and implementing valid assessments, providing interventions to students who need it. Certainly, you want to provide the ongoing professional development and literacy instruction, implementing a dyslexia screening tool based on the DESE guidelines, which we still have not received any guidance, and I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're in the closure now. Looking at the elementary standards-based report card, identifying appropriate assessments, and then committing resources to the workshop model. This was the FY21 budget that identified these areas. This is from the budget that you approved in January. So that's where these items and amounts came from. This is for those first two evidence-based programs. You could see we are required to identify the evidence-based program identified by DESE and the SOA program category. So that's all part of the template that I was referring to earlier. maybe at this point, Mr. Robinson, I'll stop, take questions for these first two.
Sure. So I have a question. So what is what type of guidance has the state given when they all of a sudden come down the road with something new that we need to do? I'll use like the civics for an example. And whatever they come down the road with new doesn't necessarily fit into this plan. How do we address that? Does that make sense what I asked?
Yeah, so I think what you're going to see, and everything I've seen out of DESE with the current commissioner has been more of alignment and making sure that things make sense instead of having the foot on the gas pedal at full throttle. So the Student Opportunity Act, whenever we get to move forward with it, is going to align with what the department goals and objectives are. So I don't think you're going to see different areas.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Let me move on.
Yep.
Okay. So now moving to Evidence-Based Program 3, which was diversifying the educator administrator workforce. So obviously, this came out of looking at our data that our teacher and administrator workforce doesn't mirror our student population, particularly with students of color. So if you remember in the FY21 budget, we have budgeted an HR payroll administrative assistant, which will allow our human resources administrator to allocate more time to recruitment and retention, which we hope this will strengthen this area. And that this also includes the development of a 3-year induction program for all teachers new to Reading. So looking at the budget piece to this, again, this is a DESE template. This is based on the FY21 budget that you approved in January. And you can see the amounts, the mentor stipends, the program, and the program categories. Evidence-based program. Oh, yep. I'm sorry. Was there a question?
Yes, Sean.
Yep. Yeah. John, and maybe it's a question for Jen Allard as well. What are some of the specific activities or initiatives, I guess, that I get the retention piece. We're gonna develop an induction program for teachers, which should help with retention beyond the first handful of years. On the recruiting a more diverse workforce piece, how does creating more capacity, in the HR function allow us to do better there? Like, what kinds of things are we going to be able to do that we couldn't do before?
Janella, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear and see me? Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm happy to answer and give a little insight into that. So we have started on some of these initiatives. I think I mentioned the last time I presented that we began taking a look at our posting process for our job requisitions. So we've begun to explore different platforms, one being the Teachers Lounge, in order to increase diversity in our recruitment. So some of those things are already beginning, but unfortunately, in my role in HR and as the head of HR, currently managing, including our seasonal employees, and it's essentially me in that role. I have a payroll personnel assistant at this point, but whose main function really is handling the payroll. I'm working on delivering services to almost about, including seasonal, 900 employees. So I think it's managing every aspect of an HR department with that amount of staff just becomes on a day-to-day very challenging. And and truly does take away from some of those higher level initiatives. One of them being increasing the diversity in order for us to create a better overall experience for those who we serve, which are the students. What that position would help do would help to allow for me to take a more strategic role in things such as not only expanding on what our practice is currently for recruiting and hiring, but also becoming more active in the work that our administrators, principals, other hiring managers are doing in their process for hiring. I think as a whole, there needs to be more involvement from my department in that. And currently right now, the ability for that, sadly, and just candidly, is in my bandwidth for that is very limited due to the day-to-day that I'm pulled from those more strategic tasks with. Also, what I would be hoping to do and what that position would help to free me up to continue to do is work more closely, as I've already started, but with Chris Kelly on our mentor program as well, in our induction program, in order for us to strengthen those areas as well. The HR department should have a much heavier hand in the oversight and the development of those programs. And sadly, at this point, that area has mainly been managed by the Department of Learning and Teaching. So those are just a few things specific to that goal that it would allow for us to do. Obviously, there are other things in other strategic goals that would now allow for me to have a heavier hand in, but specifically to that increased diversity, those are just a few things that have been discussed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Before we did have a public comment. I think you addressed it, but I will read it. It's from Mary Ann Downing, 13 Heather Drive. And it's, can the superintendent please explain why we need a new HR assistant position to allow our HR director to focus more on recruiting diverse staff? Why isn't our HR director already empowered and required to do that anyway? And why does this require an additional assistant to be able to do this? And as for having her focus on retaining diverse staff, do we have many diverse staff to retain? DESE says our teaching staff is 98% white, for example. I fully support and encourage hiring diverse staff. I'm just puzzled as to why this is not already part of our process and why we need a new assistant to enable this to happen, especially during these tight budget times. Thank you. So I think.
So I do want to clarify something. The position that's in the budget is part HR, part payroll. It's not just an HR position, it's both. The reason why we put that piece in here is because this is one of the areas that DESE has identified as an evidence-based program area. And we do not have a very diverse staff. I mean, the data shows that. So this is part of the template process when you are going through looking at the different areas that DESE has provided that you should be looking at as a school district. And this was an area that we came up with that we found we were light in.
Great, thank you. Any other questions on this? Aaron? Aaron, did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. It's not a question. It's just a comment. I just wanted to say how much I appreciated hearing from Jen about the limitations on her current abilities to meet the goals that she wants to accomplish. As a budget parent, I had questions about this position. I, sort of struggled with it, but it was really helpful as a parent and a school committee member to hear more about that from your perspective. So I just wanted to say how much I appreciated hearing these.
Thank you,
Absolutely,
Aaron.
yeah. I'm always happy to share. So,
Okay, Dr. Dougherty.
Okay, continuing on. So evidence-based program 4, facilities improvement to create healthy and safe school environments. So obviously there's been a lot going on in this area by the different types of capital projects that are currently going on and the ones that in the future could be going on. So you know about the modular classroom piece, which we will have an update next week on. The security project that is currently going on, and then the elementary school space and enrollment study, which hopefully we'll be able to do a little bit more with that once we can have public meetings again in settings. So this area, there's a lot going on the evidence-based program 4. When you take a look at the budget, there we go. When you take a look at the budget, so the modular classroom piece that was approved by town meeting, same with the town and school building security project, and then you could see the evidence-based program and the SOA program categories.
Okay.
So those are the ones that are currently in the pipeline, and I do want to caution the committee, and I did say this at the beginning, that this was pre-March 13th. A lot has happened since then at the state and local level. We do not know what is going to happen with funding and revenue funding, and we don't even know what's going to happen with this plan. So I want just to keep that on the front burner with the committee as we move forward with this. So now we want to look ahead into the future, which would be year 2 and beyond. And again, when I put this in place, these are the types of things that we were looking at. Hopefully, we'll be able to look at someday and be able to implement. So this one is expanded access to full-day kindergarten, which, as you know, we've been working on for several years. We are one of the few communities that do not have tuition-free full-day kindergarten, although 90% of our students are in tuition-based program. And if this were to be implemented, it would be currently about $1.2 million that would be needed additional for our operating budget. So here is the budget chart that would go along with that for the DESE template.
John, how current is that 1.2 million? I mean, that's
the offset in next year's budget.
okay. Okay, I see that now. I'm sorry.
The next piece, increased staffing to expand student access to the arts, computer science, enrichment, strategic scheduling. So really this looks at the model that we currently have at our elementary level, where out of necessity, years ago, students were dismissed 2 hours early on Wednesdays in order to be able to provide the necessary planning time and professional development for teachers. And that's a model that has been in existence for that amount of time. So if we were to move to a model which would be 5 full days of school, that would require additional funding. So that additional funding could be looked at in a variety of ways, whether to increase staffing for exploratory areas like the arts, computer sciences, other enrichment activities, increase staffing to provide additional recess, You know, there's a variety of ways that could be looked at. Just as a side note, this would require a collective bargaining change, because in the contract it is specifically stated about this time that's given for elementary teachers. So this is approximately what it would cost to do that. And you could see the evidence-based program and the categories in the Student Opportunity Act that would be under.
Aaron has a question. Aaron?
Hi, I'm just wondering how you got at that number, the 600,000 number.
Yeah, that's based on 2 teachers per building, and I used a $60,000 per teacher figure.
Okay, thanks.
John, can you bump that back to the last slide before this one? I just wanted to, actually, never mind. I have it right here. Never mind.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the seventh area, which is a need, increased personnel and services to support holistic student needs. This is looking at our support areas. Increased school adjustment counseling for staff at the elementary. Increased academic interventions through tutoring at the middle and high school level. We actually do not have formal tutor positions at the middle and high school level right now. Increased guidance and behavioral health counseling services at the middle and high school level. These are definitely areas that we know we could use more support at this time, and having this coordinated effort of student supports pre-K to 12 certainly will improve the academic and social emotional needs of our students. It would be difficult at this time to put a price cost to that. It would be based on the needs, but it is certainly a need that is there. It would also include, in that increased counseling and academic intervention staff, it would also include board certified behavior analysts. Excuse me, board certified behavior analysts, which, as you know, have been an amazing addition over the last 2 years to our team. And you could see the evidence-based program identified in the categories. Any questions on that?
So on the BCBA, is that one or is that multiple? Are you saying?
And again, it would be based on need, and that's why I didn't want to put an amount at this time.
So we have 2 now?
Yes, we do.
And they were about 80,000 or something like that, or roughly?
75 to 80,000.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So now moving on to the next category, commitment 3, as Desi labels it, is, okay, so how do you monitor the success? You have the evidence-based programs, you put those programs in, you do the action steps. How do you now monitor your success? So again, Desi has specific outcome metrics that you can choose from, prescribed metrics that you can choose from. You can also customize metrics as well. They do recommend that you use a combination of both. So the outcome metrics that I'm recommending that we would put in this plan would to be taking a look at our accountability classification, which really encompasses a lot of your standardized academic data on the from the MCAS, but it also takes a look at some other pieces as well. Also take a look at the ELA mean student growth percentile, the mathematics mean student growth percentile, your ELA and math achievements, and your science achievement scores. The percentage of 11th and 12th graders completing advanced coursework. And then looking at the extended engagement rate for high school completion, which is a 5-year cohort graduation rate, plus the percentage of students from the cohort who are still enrolled. This is a much better metric to use than just the standard 4-year graduation completion rate. And then also to add into this, looking at the custom district metrics, I would recommend us looking at using the vocal data, which is a climate survey that is given to students in grade 5, 8, and 9 or 10. So that would be the custom piece that we would use.
Tom has a question.
Yeah, thank you. John, a quick question here. We all know now that MCAS is canceled. And, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 of those outcome metrics that are listed there are directly related to MCAS being canceled. I understand by reading the law, we're supposed to provide evidence of our information by next April. So my question is, have we heard yet from DESE whether or not they're going to work with the legislature to provide a later update, and or are they going to expect that we have other, district determined measures or something else that would measure an outcome outside of MCAS, considering we will not have MCAS data to report on next April related to this?
We've received no guidance from DESE on any of this since the change was made.
Have there been, just to follow up real quick, have there been any, and I'm guessing the answer is no, considering everybody's focused so much on remote learning, but have there been any discussions within the administrative team or the principals about other potential district determined measures that may apply to some of these outcome metrics if we're forced to do so?
There's been no discussion at this point about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, Carla has a question.
Hi, quick question on this vocal survey, John.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about what that survey is about?
Yes. So it's a school climate survey. They give students, it's usually done after, I believe it's the science MCAS. It's a series of questions that students, or statements that students answer related to school climate. And there's different categories on school climate that they answer. And then the scores are compiled, and each school gets scores based on how the students answer the data. Answer the questions.
Is this new? Or is it not new?
They've had it for a couple of years. Yeah, they've had it for a couple of years. It's not required for students to take it. If you get 50% participation, then your scores get reported. We, for the most part, we've had over 50%. There's been a couple of schools in the last administration that for some reason didn't have the 50%. But what we've tried to do, we used, we also have the YRBS, which has school climate data. We also have, we did the Pride survey. We were supposed to do the Pride survey again in the spring, and unfortunately now we're not going to be able to do that. So we were using other survey tools as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the fourth piece of this plan is how you engage all families. And this is beyond the scope of the plan. This is just in general, how do you engage all families? So this would include implementing home visiting programs to increase dialogue, open house, back to school nights, weekly school and district newsletters, office hours, district leaders attending CPAC meetings, school and district leaders hold meetings with METCO parents at least twice a year, meeting with the PTO presidents quarterly, and then the portrait of the graduate work as well as a way to engage families. So that those were all things that were going to be part of the plan. How we were going to get feedback, again, this was pre-March 13th. Hold at least one community listening session, sending out an online survey, present information at CPAC, which we did do. Have the school committee hold a public comment section, and then have school leaders get feedback at staff meetings, which we also have done.
John, I have I'll start. I have a question. So I'll preface this by saying that, you know, I know this is very much in flux in terms of, you know, when it's due and whether or not they even do it. And my question is so I can go through the budget aspects of the presentation, and some of those have already been allocated. You know, for example, the portable classrooms, we know. And my question is, and I think I was kind of just doing scratch on the back of a worksheet here, that at the outset, we knew that we weren't going to get a lot of money. So my question is, what do you think all of this is going to cost compared to what we'll actually get? Because I mean, I don't think we're in a position to start adding to any budget right now, and probably in the foreseeable future. And you know, obviously, you know, some of those things like the BCBAs and stuff, that those are all ads, correct?
Yeah, so the first, I think it's the first three areas, those
Right.
are in the budget. Those
Right.
are the future ones are the ones that would require additional funds that are not currently allocated.
So
The
shouldn't
reason
we?
why
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. The reason why I put those in is because I wanted the community to see that this is a vision of where we want to go, to provide those opportunities for kids. I'm not required to do that. I wasn't required by the state to do that. I put those in more as a, you know, visionary document for the community versus any requirement that the state set.
So, go ahead. Sorry.
No, so the first three are built into the budget, and what we were told is that you don't put in just what the additional Chapter 70 money is. You put in what you normally would have been budgeting for these anyway. So these are things that you may already be doing and would become part of your plan.
No, I understand that, and I agree. The first three are already budgeted for. I guess my thought was, you know, I would be when preparing this document, have somewhere in the back of my mind what additional money I'm getting, and versus, you know, what I'm going to be asking the community to potentially spend. That's all. But, you know, as I said, it's so much in flux right now. But if we vote on this, or when we vote on it, does that mean we have to do it, or we're just voting on it and sending it into the state?
The only thing it means that you make a good faith attempt. It doesn't mean that you're bound and tied to it. I'll be honest, I'm not sure what's going to happen with this now. I'm not just talking about for Reading, I'm just talking about statewide. This may be put on the back burner.
Yeah. Aaron, you had a question? Aaron?
Yeah, sorry, my microphone was off. In terms of the Pride survey and students, is that something that could be administered remotely, or was it something that they did with like pencil and paper? And are we too worried that responses would be skewed because they've been out of school?
Yeah, it would not be valid at this point to administer that survey, given the current situation.
Okay.
It was done in school. It was done online.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. John Parks?
Thanks, Chuck. John, a question for future programs. One of the ones that I would think would be, a lower dollar amount overall, but something that would benefit the schools is the leadership pipeline development. Are we considering anything like this type of program for our school administrators to work with their teachers for any interest in building up that leadership team?
So remember, John, that I could have put all 17 priorities down
Mm-hmm.
and made a case for all of them. It was more to where the data showed that we had our greatest needs. So I could have added several more, and the state themselves say you should pick a few and do a few well.
Okay.
So we focused on the ones that I felt would have the greatest impact for kids.
All right, and I'd honestly love to see leadership development within the district looked at as one of those that could be done.
So you're saying to add it to the number we're already doing?
We'll leave it alone for this year, but for next year, we could put that as a year 3. It is something that in the district we should be looking to do anyways. Not that I want to give Jen Allard more work in tracking leadership development and everything, but it makes good common sense to build leadership within where you can.
Tom, are you all set, John? John Parks? Yeah, Tom had a question.
First, a quick question. First, I was able to attend the CPAC meeting in question where Dr. Dougherty did present there. And so this is the second time I've seen this presentation. And I note that it has already changed as a result of that feedback. He was asked questions around early literacy in particular at that meeting, and that is now included in the plan. It was not previously included in the plan. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank him for listening to that constituency appropriately. I appreciate that myself. Second, I would say I'm on the same page with John with regards to leadership growth and evidence practices there from a school improvement perspective. And I think we're all on the same page here, really. I'm not going to say anything people don't know, but from a leadership perspective, there's been study after study on schools improve as competencies continue to grow. Not that they don't have it now, but as competencies continue to grow of the leadership in the district, and in particular at the principal level. I think Chicago is an example where some of their best turnaround schools, they've gone to specific principal programs And those that have been the high graduates of those programs are the ones that have had the schools that have turned around the most. We don't have any major turnaround needs at the current time, but we've seen strong principals help turn things around, and the more we can grow that pipeline, I'm in agreement with John on that front. And then my question really is, due to timing, you know, we are putting in the goals basically from the last year as the first three essentially, and then some visionary ones for 4, 5, 6, 7, as the case may be. We also have a conversation later today on the calendar, and one of the conversation points on that will be scheduling our district improvement plan discussions as a committee. So as and when we work through the 3-year plan, are we able to resubmit or update this SOA plan to align with that, so that we're not out of alignment for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months between what we submitted to the state for SOA and what we may or may not readjust from a district improvement plan perspective?
Your mic's off, John.
Phone was ringing. I didn't want you to hear it. So a couple of things. I want to talk just for a second about this the leadership piece that both you and John brought up. Several of our principals right now are going through leadership development through something called the Souls of Leadership. They have, last year we had a couple of principals involved, and this year we have about half of our principals involved with that. So we also have a principal that's going through a doctoral program right now. We have a principal that completed a doctoral program last year. So we do have several principals that have been developing their leadership skills over the last few years. To answer your second question, Tom, pre-March 13th, the DESE and the law said, yes, you could make changes to the plan in years 2 and 3. Did I answer?
Just following up on that, I mean, yes, you did. Thank you. The law, I think, says by April 1st every year, but is there a limitation? It only can be applied every spring. So if we were to put in place, thinking forward, if we put in place the district improvement plan for the next 3 years in the July, August, September of this year, does that mean we're not updating this plan until next April? Is that what we're saying?
No, you can, it's a fluid plan.
Okay.
Is that good? Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, John. Now we'll, Carla has a question.
Sorry. My quick question. My question is about the first 3 budget items have already been added, right? They're already in the budget. And then the future ones are not in the budget. So right. What happens if we vote on this? We're voting on this future stuff. For example, 1.2 million or whatever it's going to cost for budgeting for full day kindergarten. And then the other piece is the $600,000 to increase elementary staffing for arts and computer science and things like that. What we have to have a good faith effort to bring those to fruition.
No. In fact, those are more visionary. I'm not required to submit those. I wanted the committee to see this. These are the types of things that we would use moving forward if we had funding, but we are not required to even submit those.
Okay, so by us, sorry, Chuck, can I keep going here? So by us voting on this, we're not by us voting on this plan, we're not voting on approval of those additional items.
That's correct. In fact, everything is always subject, especially now, it's going to be subject to funding. So even voting on the first three doesn't necessarily mean that those are going to come to fruition because of funding.
Thank you.
Because if this is due, I'll just use this as an example, which again, I'm not sure that this is going to be due May 15th. If this is due May 15th, town meeting is June 15th. At least it is right now. And the budget that you approved in January will most likely be much different than the budget that will be approved on June 15th.
Yeah, but I just interject there. When you just said the first three, the 1 and 2 of the first three, those are full steam ahead. I mean, that's not going to be unfunded. We've already, I mean, I think they're already making the modulars, aren't they?
Yes, yes.
So that I wouldn't say that those are those.
No,
I would say maybe 3 of the first 3, meaning the position that we're adding, but the security and the modulars are already funded.
Yes, that's correct. What I was referring to is we don't know what the operating budget's going to look like for FY21 at this point.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's go into the superintendent evaluation process. John?
Yep. Let me try to figure out what I need to do here. So I'm going to pull up the memo. Does everyone see the memo?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So what I want to try to do is to walk you through the process for the evaluation piece, and how this will work. So I'm going to go through the memo and talk about it. So I mentioned a little bit of this last week. So there is a 5-step cycle that all educators, licensed educators in Massachusetts go through. Starts with a self-assessment, and I will share the self-assessment with you next week that I did as part of my evidence. The goal-setting piece was done in late October by the school committee approved. I included that in the packet. You will next week get an update on that district improvement plan and goals. What you have is what was approved in October. What you will see next week are it's like a status report of that. The plan then gets implemented. There's a mid-year piece to it, mid-year check-in. And then the last piece of it is the end of the year or summative. So the step in that's step 5. So the step that we're at right now is step 5, the summative evaluation. So in step 5, what you are going to see next week is I will be submitting a large amount of evidence that will align with 2 areas. One is the different standards in the rubric, and the other area are the goals of both my goals and the district improvement plan goals. So you will see that next week. You will then review the evidence and any other information that I've given you. You're then going to complete a summative evaluation, which I will show you the form in a minute. That is then submitted, and I believe it's you, Mr. Robinson, that's going to be receiving these.
Yes.
So Mr. Robinson and I will get the drafts of those reports. And then Mr. Robinson will compile, eventually we'll compile them and create one final summative evaluation report, which is the one that will be voted on by school committee. So I'm going to shift to the form in a second, and I'll walk you through that so that you can see it. But essentially the way it works is there are different ratings that you give different parts of the summative. The first part is you assess the goals. And so you give a rating of 1 of 5 areas did not meet, some progress, significant progress, met or exceeded. Then you give ratings for each of the indicators, which then translates to ratings against the standards. There are 4 ratings that one of 4 ratings you can give: unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, or exemplary. You then rate the overall performance, you share a draft, the chair compiles the draft as I mentioned, and then you adopt a summative evaluation report. So the timeline that I've proposed, which fits the contractual obligations. So with this meeting here, I'm presenting the information. At the April 30th school committee meeting, I'll present the evidence. From May 1st to the 14th, you'll complete a draft copy of the summative evaluation report, and then send it to both Mr. Robinson and I. And then the week of the 14th, or from the 14th to the 21st, I'll meet with each of the individual school committee members to discuss the draft evaluation, answer any questions you may have, etc. And then if adjustments need to be made to the draft, they'll be made at that time and then sent to the school committee chair by the 24th, and that would become your final summative evaluation. The chair then will, from the 24th to the 8th, compile a one final evaluation, which is then reviewed and discussed on June 11th and voted on. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is this video link. So DESE has 5 videos on the superintendent evaluation process. This link here is a video link that goes to the last step, which is the reporting of the ratings and deciding and reporting on the ratings. So at your leisure, if you want to watch that, it's literally 2 minutes, I think, or 3 minutes or something like that.
Do you want to, can you put it on now, or is it not?
I can try.
It looks like it's frozen. That's all right, John.
Can you see it?
No.
Oh, you can't? Oh, because I can. All right. All right. Wait a minute.
Did anyone else see it?
No, I couldn't see it.
That's interesting. Hold on a second. Oh, I know why it didn't. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes. That Dorothy Presser?
Hold on. Let me start at the beginning. Here we go.
No volume.
Hear it?
Video playback's not supported on Teams,
Yeah.
so you won't be able to hear it.
It's pretty easy to find, Chuck. I watched it last night.
All right.
Okay.
That's all right, John.
Sorry about that.
So just to summarize, we'll have the evidence by the 30th, correct? Is that what you said?
Let me pull back the. So you're going to get the evidence next week. I'll have it all for you next week. Can you hear me? Chuck, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure. So yes, I'll have the evidence for you next week.
Okay. And then if anybody has any questions on how to do the
Well,
fill out the,
I'm going to walk you through that right now, if that's okay.
oh, sure. Okay. Yeah.
So, Chuck, can I ask a question before we move on
Sure,
to the
sure.
to the that piece? So in the packet from last week, there was an FAQ from MASC around how to do evaluations, in the time of coronavirus, and one of the discussions was about how do you frame the goals, or how do you kind of snap a line for when you evaluate the goals, given that a lot of your focus has rightly changed since mid-March. And part of the discussion was you might look at it and say, what had we achieved as of March 12th, or whatever the right date would be? What did we achieve as of that date? And maybe we would treat, for the purposes of weighting, a significant progress or kind of an on track against a given goal as the same way you would have maybe treated a met for a certain goal, at the end of the year. It feels to me like we probably need to be calibrated on how we want to think about goals as you and the timing for goals as you do your self-assessment. It also has implications probably for how those of us who are new to the committee participate, given that our tenure, almost entirely comes after mid-March. And so, it seems like something that we should probably discuss before we move on here tonight.
Well, I think that I'd like to see the evidence that we get, and I think that when we see that can help us determine what's appropriate to evaluate, to use your term, snap a line as to what makes sense to evaluate or not. But I'm happy to discuss it tonight as well. What were you thinking it should look like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a particular lean. I wanted to highlight that, you know, in the MASC guidance, one of the outcomes that they suggested was, you know, again, this idea that you might try and evaluate progress made through mid-March. And if you couple that with their guidance that new committee members only write an evaluation on the portions of the year that were part of their tenure on the committee, that has implications for the three of us. So I don't know that, you know, I don't have a right or wrong answer there. I don't have a proposal per se. I think it's worth us discussing. And Dr. Dougherty, I'd you know, ask your opinion. Would guidance there influence in any way the evidence you collect or how you frame the evidence, or you know, how you develop your self-assessment? Would that be influenced in any way by us, you know, essentially saying, let's look at progress made through mid-March versus trying to have an end of the year type of focus?
I'm going to give you both. I'm going to give you data leading up to mid-March, and then I'm going to give you things that have been happening since mid-March. Because I really think it is two different worlds that we're in right now.
And Sean, I know that and we talked a little bit about this, I think last week, the MASC guidance has been to, with new school committee members, and limited in terms of what they will actually do for an evaluation. But, you know, I was reminded last week that, you know, people looked at that as just that, guidance, and still went ahead and did pretty thorough evaluations. So I read that as the committee wanting to make their own decisions in terms of what they want to do, and not have us dictate what we want to see from the new members. And that's, as I said, I'm fully open to discuss that. That's just the way I interpreted that. But if people don't agree, that I'd like, you know, let's talk about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, for my sake, I'm only highlighting the new member piece as you know, one potential implication of this decision. I still think, going into, you know, the first half of May, when you know, up to 6 of us are off writing our individual evaluations, I think it would be helpful for us to have kind of a common view of how we're evaluating the year through March versus, you know, everything from mid-March and beyond. So that feels to me like it merits discussion at some point, regardless of who does or doesn't participate or write a review. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you. Tom, did you have something?
Yes, Chuck, thank you. And this might help Sean, it might not, so take it with a grain of salt if you need to. I think there's kind of two ways to look at the review from that perspective, and there's two major sections of the review, which we're about to get to from a coverage perspective as well. Right? There's the goals section, and then there's the standards section. I think your point about March 2nd, you know, more or less, some of those goals seem to have stopped in time as of March 12th, I should say, not March 2nd, right? So the goals section, maybe that's the point that, for that point, you think, okay, what do we do through March 12th, and what can I do as an individual committee member based upon the evidence given to me and any other evidence I see, find, etc. since I was there. The standard section continues on. We're watching it in live, basically, right? How is the instruction carrying out? How's the curriculum carrying out? How's the, you know, financial side carrying out? You know, if you go through that standard section, that hasn't stopped necessarily, is the way I'm viewing it as an individual member of the committee. So there's kind of those two different sections of the review almost have two different timelines. Your point is very valid about March 12th and the goals portion. The standard section has continued as we've watched it and heard it and participated in it live to a degree.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else? So I think that, I think we should, I agree with you, Sean, that, we should all be on the same page as to what we're using. So maybe when we get through the end of this presentation, we can revisit that and maybe drop some parameters for everybody to look at. So, John, did you
Sure.
want to?
Yeah, I'll show you the forms. It's because I think sometimes the forms can be a little. So I'll start with the rubric. This is the new rubric. So the rubric talks about how it's designed, and then it goes into the standard. There are 4 standards. Standards have different sections. These here are called elements. So 1A is an element, 1B is an element, etc. So each of the standards has a different level of focus. So standard 1 is your instructional leadership standard. Standard 2, management operations. Standard 3 is family and community engagement. And standard 4 is professional culture. So there are different levels to each of those. So that's the rubric. That rubric will help you go through the other piece, which I'm going to show you now. Let me find, here it is. So this is the summative form. This is the form that you eventually will turn in. You almost have to work backwards with this form. The way Dusty set it up never made sense to me, but I'm going to work backwards. Okay. So here are the goals. I've pre-populated the goals for you. These goals align with the district improvement plan goals. So I had 4 goals, 1 student learning goal, 3 professional practice goals. I put in the focus indicators for you, so you didn't have to do that. And then there were 3 district improvement plan areas, again with focus indicators, and here's a description of them. You give each goal 1 of 5 ratings. Those are the 5 ratings up above. You then would, so I'm gonna shift now back up here. So the 3 professional practice goals you would give an overall rating for. The 1 student learning goal you would give an overall rating for. In the 3 district improvement plan goals you would give an overall rating for. Okay. Does that make sense for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. Now going back down here again. And here's a kind of a cheat sheet of the areas and the different indicators. So what you do, and this is tied into the rubric I just showed you. So you give a rating for each of these areas, and then you give an overall rating based on the ratings that you put on up here. And then you put in comments in the comment section. You do the same for the other areas as well, for the other 4 standards and the indicators that align with that. Now you come back up here, step 2, and you give the overall rating for each standard that you put down below, you bring over here, and put them in these 4 areas, and then based on what you put for these 4 standards, you then put an overall rating, overall summative rating, and then evaluate the comments. Any questions on that?
I don't see any.
Okay. Don't think there's any other documents, but let me check. I think that's all the documents.
Okay, so we can either, kind of try to set some parameters tonight, or we can certainly do it after we look at the evidence and have had time to kind of process it between now and in our own minds between now and next week. What are people's thoughts on that? Actually, I get we got some questions. John Parks?
Not a question, but my opinion, I would say we hold till next week till we get the evidence before we can really make decisions on how we're going to do that.
Okay. Aaron, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, just a clarifying process question. At any point, do we have access to other people to ask questions as part of our evidence, or like central office staff or principals?
We haven't done that in the past. I mean, good question. I guess I'd have to think about, I don't, how we can do that without, without not staying in our lane, I guess.
It was a process question I was curious about.
Tom?
Just to, I guess, put my 2 cents in there with Aaron's question as well. I think last year I asked about the concept of a 360 feedback session or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. Stop, start, continue, just to ask 3 or 4 questions of, the up, down, and arounds. And that may include, if John so wants to, peers in the superintendent community as well. But 3 questions: what would you stop? What would you start? What would you continue? And see what kind of feedback we receive from his reports and his peers. And obviously we're his bosses, so we don't go that side. But anything else along those lines, if he's so inclined, would probably be beneficial.
John, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do not.
Okay. Let me kind of process that for the next meeting. Tom, did you, or was that already you already raised? Yeah. Okay. Sean, did you have anything else, or are you all right with
Nope.
you all right with the suggestion that we figure out the goalpost after we see the evidence and stuff?
I'm all set. I just wanted to make sure that
Okay.
Sean didn't need anything for
Okay.
his piece over the next week. So as long as he's comfortable, I'm comfortable.
Okay. Thank you. Carla, did you have anything, or?
Nope, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. So, thank you, John. And that is the only other thing we need to discuss tonight is the calendar. That was included in the end of the packet. John and Tom Wise and myself had earlier this week and kind of drew this up, and in being mindful that, you know, we don't know how much longer this remote stuff will be, but trying to get things back on the calendar that we were going to do in a regular meeting. So I think we managed to get a lot of it in there. With next week, pretty packed agenda. We'll finish this discussion on the evaluation, and then Colby Brunt, our labor counsel, is going to come in and do a presentation for us. And then that one is all in public session. And then you can see the other things, the social media discussion, and Tom is putting together some material for that that he and I will go over before that meeting. And then we'll hear from Gail and Joe on the capital stuff. Does anybody have any questions on the other items on the calendar, or see something that they'd like to see on the calendar? And if you don't know tonight, you can certainly let me know, and we can try and figure it out.
Chuck,
Yes.
just one point of information. I'm not sure what's going to happen on April 30th, well, after April 30th in terms of remote.
Right.
So my guess is we're going to continue to be remote at least through May 14th. So some of those items may have to get moved because it'll be remote.
Yeah, I mean, the only one I see that probably would get moved would be the executive session with Michael Joyce.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else, or? Oh, Carla, sorry, I see your hand raised.
And Sean and Aaron as well before that.
Wow. Yeah, I was talking too much. Sorry, Sean, you go first.
I don't know that it necessarily needs to appear here on the calendar, because it could certainly fit into the reports, but should we expect that we'll have kind of a substantive update on the next phase of the remote learning plan in one of these next couple of meetings? How should we think about that?
Yeah, it would be part of our reports, and it would be dependent on when we complete the MOA.
Okay.
I mean, I would like to say a goal would be that would be for the April 30th, but I don't want to, you know.
It won't be ready by April 30th, Chuck.
Yeah. Okay. Aaron, did you have a question?
I do. If there's a draft of the social media policy that we can look at now, I'd appreciate getting that sooner if possible.
Okay. John, can you send out the at least, it's not a policy, but it's something to get started with, the MASC guidelines?
Actually, those you gave to us at our onboarding meeting. So I have those, but I was under the impression you guys at least had a draft of a policy that you had worked on before I was elected to the school committee. So I guess I was just wondering if I could get a copy of that before, like, without having to wait to get the packet next week or 2 weeks.
Chuck, do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, we can, the final, you mean the final one that when we stopped talking about it for a while? Yeah, we can send that out.
So, I mean, yes, I would say, so where we ended last, just to summarize, Aaron, was that there was some misunderstanding or non-alignment between how to label the policy,
Yeah.
from a letter code perspective. So that's an outstanding task I'm working through with some guidelines. There was also a large set of open meeting law rulings that was part of that should be able to be sent to you ahead of time. So that could probably be sent without any of the other policy updates. And so the action I'm working through, as Mr. Robinson mentioned, was to update the policy after talking with Dorothy Presser and maybe Tracy Novak of MASC with regards to the labeling and whether or not it fits into the electronic communications policy or stands alone as its own policy. And then the conversation will be around procedures or guidelines, and whether we have our own set of procedures, which is what we previously had published, or whether we take the policy and then use the guidelines as an implementation plan for that. So the old procedures were, I think they were included in one of the old packets back from October. I don't have a problem with you getting them again, but I do think they probably will be updated as a result of some of the work over the next couple of days.
Thank you.
Carla? Carla, did you have a question?
Sorry. It sounded like you may have a concern about about us doing a virtual executive session. My comment was I would like the executive session with Michael Joyce to be prior to May 14th, if possible, prior to when the draft evaluation would have to be submitted. And if we are not able to do a virtual executive session, possibly do one in person, spread out enough.
Okay, yeah, you are correct. I did not want to do a virtual executive session just because, we can't control who's necessarily in the room. And when we're talking about students or personnel or whatever, I just don't want to do that. But let me think about whether or not we can do something before the 14th, or at or around there, in person.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I don't know. I've been checking the email. I think that's everything for tonight. I've been checking the email and I haven't seen any public input unless, did anyone else see something? We read Mary Ann Downing's.
You're correct. There's nothing else, sir.
Okay. Very good. I really, big thank you to the technology folks for, again, keeping us afloat here tonight and getting things set up for us. And I know that school, it's a quasi vacation week and I appreciate all the staff that was here tonight too. So, thank you for everything you're doing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Is there a motion?
Thank you.
Motion
Yes.
to adjourn.
Is there a
Second.
second?
Carla Nazara, second.
Let's a roll call. Mr. Wise,
Yes.
Carla,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
John Parks,
Aye.
Sean Brandt,
Aye.
Chuck Robinson, aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.